What's up, everybody? I'm back. A little bit of a hiatus, but let me tell you, I've been busy. I've been out of the country. I've returned, but I will say this before I even start the video. Please, if you ever get the chance, any opportunity you have, explore outside of your comfort zone. If you get to go to another state, if God, allow it, you go to another country, then enjoy the humbling culture that you can learn, the different societal norms, the mannerisms, and let that educate you, give you the knowledge that, the differences in people, and don't be like the Trump supporters that all stay in their little echo chamber and they never want to get outside of their comfort zone. They choose to stay isolated and keep themselves away from embracing other cultures. Because in all honesty, that is a weakness. You choose to only know one thing, and you're only ever going to know that one thing. And of course, when you pass that down to your kids, what do you get? A bunch of little racist gremlins. And, well, the cycle never stops. But regardless, I also wanted to talk about a little bit about the news of what's going on before I get to the fun conspiracy theory, because there's been a lot happening. We have a new pope. Pope Francis had died, and we have an American pope now from Chicago. That's interesting. But I will actually go back to Pope Francis's funeral for a part of the conspiracy theory. Little bits and pieces here. So, Trump, he is a character. I will say that. I feel like anytime I talk about him, I turn into a weatherman rather than a news person, because it's a shitstorm every time he opens his fucking mouth.
Breaking news, everything is bad. It's just as terrible as you imagined, and probably worse.
And one of the things he wants is a military-style parade in his honor for his birthday. Ironic, because he is a draft dodger. So all the vets out there that are Republicans that support him, just think about that, that old nationalistic spirit you got. What would you think of to draft dodgers back in the day? Also, he decided to take a little bribe, a small little bribe of a $300 to $400 million private jet from Qatar.
Free jet. I could say, no, don't give us, I want to pay you $1 billion or 400 million or whatever it is. Or I could say, thank you very much.
Wow, he yoinked that shit. But one interesting thing that we should be paying attention to, out of all the distractions of arguing amongst ourselves, he is playing the old Hitler game of Night of Long Knives, because he has been slowly arresting and taking out essentially the checks and balances, which are these politicians that have been opposing him, judges specifically.
First, we have breaking news as we come on the air at 11. A Milwaukee County judge just arrested by the FBI.
And a mayor that went to one of the holding camps they have.
They're talking about coming back to arrest you.
Going where? I'm not on their property. They can't come out in the street and arrest me.
That have way more than the maximum capacity they should be holding of immigrants that they have detained, and essentially are using mini concentration camps, minus the gassing, but, or at least from what we know. And he has been doing that while all these smaller things have been happening, and we have been kind of ignoring it, unfortunately. And recently, this is kind of annoying because it's a very double standard thing to do, but we've recently had South Africans come into Dallas. They have been flying in as refugees. They have quite the status, right? I wonder what happened to them.
The president made it clear that Afrikaners in South Africa who were the victims of unjust racial discrimination would be welcome to come to the United States.
Well, it's actually because They have a black president now, Cyril Ramaphosa, I believe. My apologies if I butchered that, but the Dutch colonists that have been there for years, who usurped power and put the people under subjugation through apartheid, essentially Jim Crow for South Africa, and have taken away the power and land from the people for so long, he has initiated a land reclaim as one of the things he's been trying to pass.
This process of having to change the land ownership architecture in our country, it is here and it is here to stay. It is going to happen.
And of course, in fear and need for refugee status, they come over here. Why didn't they just go back to their motherland? Why didn't they just return to the Netherlands? Instead, they skipped thousands upon thousands of immigrants who were actually trying to use the legal means and processes of getting through this slow and arduous journey, and they just skipped straight into the U.S. rather than going to Europe, where they came from. But enough of all that. Let's get into the fun part, the theory, the play of history, theology, and patterns. Everyone loves that stuff, right? Anyways, it starts with the Gematria calculator, which is a Kabbalistic method of interpreting Hebrew scriptures by computing things into a numerical value, which just means you turn letters into numbers based on the consonant letters. So, this will make sense in a second by giving you a simple example. So, one of the most well-known bad numbers is 666, which, using that calculator, which has been revolutionized since into the Gematriix, which is just the online version, it gives you Nero Caesar. That's what 666 is. Well, one of the interpretations of 666 is. And it is documented that he is supposedly the Antichrist, at least of that time. And so that's when things get interesting. I'm back. Had to cut it in half because, well, I have to go to work. Such is life, right? But anyways, the calculator, the Geometrix that I had mentioned, if you type in "Make America Great Again," the value you get is 426. And with the Old Testament Hebrew lexicon, it gives you Strong's Hebrew number, which is 426. That translates into God. So, with my theory, I would propose that Donald Trump is one of two things. Either he is just another crook from a line of sexist, racist grifters who is now a feeble-minded, low-reading comprehension having, tantrum-throwing asshat who uses third-grade vocabulary to hook uneducated morons to follow him hell or high water. Or, he's the Antichrist who uses his charisma to have people pledge their allegiance to him. Like Nero, he will fiddle as Rome burns. Or in his context, golf. Seeing is believing, as the Antichrist would covet people's support without them even knowing. Something that the idolater, MAGA, do happily. They're so properly brainwashed. If you oppose anything Trump does or says, they defend it. Even if that means they reject or avoid your facts and opinion outright. Which brings me to start of the subtle indications. Revelation 13:17.
He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead.
And then we can't ignore the fact that upon inauguration, he chose not to put his hand on the Bible.
Keen-eyed observers may have noticed Donald Trump did not put his hand on the Bible when he did his swearing in during the inauguration ceremony.
And yes, there has been presidents that have chose not to do that in the past, but let's double down and look at the fact that when he went to Pope Francis's funeral, which the attire was abundantly clear to be black, despite 3 other people choosing not to, he was front row and center, and what was he seen doing? Chewing gum, falling asleep, and getting that high score in Candy Crush as he was playing on his phone. Probably tweeting about, "Oh, I feel so sad, sad emoji." Because he always wants the attention. That's what it comes down to, pride. It was not out of respect for the Pope, otherwise he would have at least been able to put on a suit, right? Sounds like something you would have told Zelensky if he wore blue, trust me. So, now let's look at the fact that he also decided to put a AI image of him as Pope shortly after.
Posted an AI image on Saturday of President Trump as the Pope.
Well, it wasn't good.
And if that's not mockery, I don't know what is. Now on to history repeating itself, perhaps on a grander scale, is the fact that the gospel accounts for a man named Barabbas. He was a bandit. He had a plethora of crimes, his most notable being that he was an insurrectionist, was pardoned over Jesus in a Passover tradition, and while Trump, in the modern day, decided to pardon all of the insurrectionists who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, meanwhile we have ICE detaining undocumented workers, actual U.S. citizens, and neither have been given any due process. But yeah, that's the theory. And if you like it, I'm glad. If you didn't like it, oh well, maybe next time. Whatever. But I did want to show you my shirt before I head out. I made this since I couldn't find one that, well, suited what I was going for. But you have Deathstroke coming in for the haymaker. Trump's flying tooth. And you have Red Hood. Yeah, I chose to go with DC on this one. I think it did it justice. But until next time.